What are the typical financing structures for M&A transactions, private equity buyouts in Switzerland versus the rest of the DACH region? Karl Spielberger of Orlando Management.
Well, Switzerland, you would typically have a leverage, net debt to EBITDA leverage of 3 to 3.5, in some cases up to 4. Most of the banks would ask you for, say, 50% equity. In some cases you could get a little bit lower. Otherwise you have the typical features, covenants and so on. The main difference between Switzerland and other countries in the DACH regions, I would say, is the cost. So i.e. mainly interest margin plus structuring fee is much higher in Germany right now, and also Austria, evidently.
We were also talking of club deals for German assets. That private equity managed to leverage the transactions in Germany a little bit easier than Swiss transactions. Are club deals also possible in the Swiss market?
Yeah, they're absolutely possible, and you see them from time to time. It's more a question of the size. I mean, ticket size in Switzerland normally is not so large, so the need for equity or for a club deal is not so large. Most of the large banks, they will take maybe 20, 25 or 30 million equity ticket on the debt ticket on their own. So this means in order to really have a reasonable size for a club deal, you're talking about 50 to 100 million. And that's a reasonable size for Switzerland. So you don't have that many, particularly private equity deals, where you have such high debt tickets.
Indeed, Switzerland is a small market, but last year we saw some really jumbo transactions with Apax buying Orange. So we all want to know whether next year we'll see large buyouts from international funds requiring a lot of debt. What's your perception?
Yeah, I would also be interested to know about this. Well, no, honestly, I personally, I think that's very stochastic. I mean, that's always a very few events, so that therefore they're very difficult to predict. I mean, this could happen next year. If you look at each of them, it could happen 2 years or 3 years later. You could even have 2 or 3 years in a row, but it's just, I think it's without insight, and I don't have any insight in the targets, so it's extremely difficult to predict.
It seems that only corporates are closing the largest transactions in the market. For example, Glencore and Xstrata. It's more of a corporate market than a buyout market, Switzerland.
Yeah, especially if you compare it 5 years ago. I mean, 5 years ago it was probably also to a large extent corporate, but the portion of private equity was definitely larger. So this has changed. I think it has changed to a healthy level. I think in a normal situation it's typical that a strategic buyer, if he wants an asset, then he really outbids the private equity, if there is not other reasons why private equity is a good candidate, which is very often the case. So it's, there is still a playing field for private equity. I'm optimistic about that. So although corporates are back, and if they want something, they have an edge, I mean, there is still lots of things to look at for private equity.